We are in, I call this meeting to order. Let's see, colleagues, I will move to have some of these items, just move them on consent, but we do have comment cards for every item. So we'll start with the individuals who have filled out comment cards. With every item, you'll get a total of 4 minutes for your public comment and all the items together. And we'll start with Armando Herman.
Hey, Mr. O'Farrell, I'm the puppet speaking for Herman today. So let's get some laughs on this one, buddy. On item number 1, we're talking about zoo animals. See, people, I don't have to look at them when I talk. I just talk to Mr. O'Farrell and says, hey, Zoo Department has a memorandum understanding between the Greater Los Angeles Association Zoo. Except some people like killing animals like they did that poor silverback gorilla. Pow! 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 It wasn't going to hurt the kid. We fucking animals know right from wrong, and just when God tells us to eat you people, we eat you. That's item number 1. Now going to item number 2, children. Children love my jacket because it says love on it. Do I love you, O'Farrell? O'Farrell, I love you. Okay, now let me go into item number 2. The officer chief analyst, I dealt with an analyst before, he's a jackass. But he's talking about the request of proposals for concessions at the Los Angeles Zoo. Hey, Peppa Pig, welcome. Hey, it's me. Oh, fuck number 2. Let's go to I like the number 6, Mr. O'Farrell. 666. Kind of like when people get sick, they die. Yeah, Mr. Puppet Herman used to work in a hospital and watch people die and take them down to the 2nd floor morgue at County USC. And he used to stack them like pancakes, one body on top of the other, because there was no room at County USC.
We're not actually speaking to any agenda item there.
Okay.
And they never do. So
I'm going back to item 6.
What do you recommend?
Department Rec and Parks report relative to the approval submission.
You can tell them that if they don't get back on subject,
I'm
you'll
going
cut
on
their
the
time
puppet
off, and that'll be
subject.
the end of
Stop
it.
interrupting this.
Even when we combine it with general public comment?
That's not me. It's me.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not me, it's
All right,
Mr. B.
so the city attorney
Stop the clock,
made
please.
very aware that, no, the clock is running,
Well, then
that
fuck
you
it.
need to stay on
I'm talking
on the
about the LA84 fucking Foundation for 2016-2017 Girls Softball fucking League grant. Why don't you double that amount so these poor kids can have the opportunity for supplement of girls softball programs? Don't we love children? You know minorities don't have softball equipment. You should know better than that. But you still fuck with my time on the physical impact statement, although it was
you're off
submitted
topic
on item
again,
6.
second
I'm on
time.
item 6, sir. Stop interrupting. I got 4 fucking minutes. And then I'm going to go to item 4 because it talks about the bitch, O'Farrell, the city administrative officer, assistant department culture. Mr. B, handle this shit.
To release requests for proposals for capital improvement. Well, we know this poverty pimp has no improvements because the operation under Warner Grand Theater has not submitted public transparency reports. Why don't you have a report so the public knows what you're really doing, Mr. O'Farrell? You know, the theater's a nice place for us bears to hang out, especially when you're homeless and you got nowhere to go but to get into a nice theater and cool off and watch the performers jump up and down like this. Look. Huh. That's theater for you. See, when I was in Venice Beach the other day, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about how the performance of cultural arts is important for us. Remember when you were a dancer? La 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 la.
Again, we're off topic.
No, I'm talking about the theater, sir. Cultural affairs. We're talking about the Warner Grand Theater. It's about shows.
Okay, Mr. Spindler.
All right. Well, back from the vacation. So, the Los Angeles Criminal Zoo Department is on the agenda. and expired agreements and memorandums of understanding. All of them. Anyway, nobody cares about what they are. Nobody reads the shit. Nobody cares about it. Just spend the money killing elephants, torturing animals and bears, just like you murdered that poor goddamn elephant, and you don't do nothing about that. So then you have the city administrative officer, Miguel Tequila Santana, and regarding the framework and the time frames required to release a request for proposal for concessions, how long has this been going on now? This concession shit, how long has this been going on? How long does it take for you to put a 7-Eleven in a fucking zoo? Put a 7-Eleven in the fucking zoo. You got 7-Elevens everywhere. I go to CD6. I can find a 7-Eleven built under my rooftop. So 7-Eleven, you can put it into the zoo. You can put an AM/PM market and a gas station in front of it. But the problem is you got some kind of psychosis when it comes to the zoo. You don't want kids to eat ordinary foods. You think these kids are going to eat healthy. Kids want to run around and look at the goddamn animal exhibits, and they want a big gulp, and they want a Slurpee, and they want to eat shit that's bad for them. There's nothing wrong. They're kids. They have a good metabolism. But this concession that you're trying to make is not going to work. 7-Eleven, give it to them. Then we got the Department of Recreation and Parks. My God, that's Mr. Sanders, wasn't it? Rec and Parks, Michael Hunt versus City of Los Angeles, $246,000. You can't even go to a Department of Rec and Parks meeting without getting arrested for some bullshit. People try to go to the meetings, and they go, "Can I go to the meeting, Mommy?" And they go, "No, because you'll be arrested for accusing you of wearing a hood." So it's a mess. And then we get to this RFP again for the Warner Grand Theater. What takes so long? How long does it take to operate a theater? What do you do in a theater? You have a bunch of homos dancing around on a stage. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to run a theater. You hire some security, some bouncers, serve some booze, overcharge for the parking, and then the guys at the parking get to rob the cars and give you back 20%. We know what happens. It's okay. It's City of LA. And then we have the food service program grant, $811,000 from the Department of Education to hand out two things: cheap tacos and horrible food. Nobody wants Obama lunches. $811,000 for food that kids won't eat. Welcome back current price from the vacation. Yes. So, for example, you could give the $811,000 to PDQ Enterprises, and then they could feed all the kids for half the money. So the girls' softball, the only good thing, I support it. Yes on number 6. Now that's a good thing.
Do we have Antonia Ramirez in the room? Antonia Ramirez? Okay. And Armando Herman, you've been making noise the whole time, so I'll give you one more warning, and you really need to control your behavior while other people are speaking. You can't control it while you're speaking, but at least you can control it while others are.
And Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Ramirez came in late, so she's being given 4 minutes for everything.
Yeah, because she filled out several comment cards, including general public comment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, when you talk about insecticides, Roundup being done at the parks, what kind of insecticides, and will it affect all the human beings? I wouldn't mind if it hurt the gangbangers and the wetbacks, but I hope it will not hurt the general public who go and enjoy the park. Next, item number 5, Summer Food Service Program grant for 811,000? No, that's too much. And most of this service, this summer food service program, will only help the wetbacks and the gangbangers. Again, the low incomes. Most of them are illegals. Hell no. Let's use that money to help our military veterans. Hell no to these illegals. No way. Item number 6. 70,000, 409,000 to supplement the girls softball program. Hell no, that is excessive. It's not as if they are taking a school trip to Europe. That money could be better used to fight crimes, especially these goddamn Chango Latino gangbangers, pigs, and thieves. Again, we have a gang epidemic. Let's use the money to fight crimes and or help and house our military veterans. Let's help the downtown crimes. We have a bad situation in downtown. The crime is astronomical. Okay, thank you. Public comments. This morning, I went to the Music Center females bathroom, block 4, at about 7:08. This is the most problematic and dangerous, filthy bathroom at the Music Center Grand Park. Once inside, I noticed that there was no toilet paper, no toilet seat covers. Once again, and you got your changa gangbangers and wetbacks, pigs and thieves who take everything and destroy the premises. And as I go in there to go about my business, I see a Latina changa gangbanger who walks in at 7:10 a.m. and she starts her brawling and bullying, and she wants to get into the first sink right next to the first stall. So she says, I don't have time for this, I got to get out of here. And she starts bullying me. I then take her picture, she gets pissed off, and I go into the first stall this morning and I call the police. And she starts with, I figured with her hand closed, starts banging on the door again for quite a while, and I call the police. Then again, these are multiple players. These are gang stalkers, one after the other. If you know anything about gang stalking, okay, please look up retired ex-FBI agent Ted Gunderson on YouTube. Ted Gunderson. These are multiple players that come in one after the other. These are wetbacks and gangbangers that come and harass you and start banging on the bathrooms, start tearing out the toilet seat covers, and start putting feces on the floor, everything. And they do this predominantly when I'm coming into the bathroom or when I'm in the bathroom. And this happens every day in the morning from 5:30 in the morning to 10 in the morning, or in the evening from 6 to 10. This Music Center Grand Park knows this. And so here comes another red-haired brawler, wetback, and she starts another scenario, and she starts brawling and starts having problems with me. Now again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm waiting for the police to come. This is happening at the parks, not only at the Music Center Grand Park, this is happening at all the parks. We have a gang epidemic, and many innocent people, good people, get bullied by these individuals night and day. And this has to stop. And the Music Center hires only one person security per block. You need at least 3 to 4 people, officers, to monitor the blocks, every day, 7 days a week. You need at least a female officer in front of the female's bathroom and a male officer in the male's bathroom, because you have also a lot of brawls between the blacks and the Latinos. I go in to take care of my business. I don't go there to start a fight with anybody. I'm no better than anybody, but I'm no less than anybody either. I respect my humanity as I respect others, but I will not be bullied by anybody, whether they are wetback, gangbangers, etc. Music Center Grand Park is atrocious in the way they handle things. Thank you.
All right. I would like to welcome our Vice Committee Chair, Curran Price, Bob Blumenfield, Paul Koretz, and David Rue. This regular meeting, the Arts Parks Committee, is in order. And colleagues, what I'd like to do is take items 4 on consent, unless there are items 4 through 6, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, without objection, that's exactly what we'll do. And so what I'd like to then do, colleagues, is go to item 1, and that is progress and status update on all current and expired agreements and MOUs between the city and the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. Mr. Blaine Sutton-Willis, please read the item.
Good morning, committee members. Item number 1, Los Angeles Zoo Department report relative to the progress and status update on all current and expired agreements and memoranda of understanding between the city and the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. We have zoo staff and I believe GLAZA members present if you have questions.
Great, thank you. And I know we have Mr. John Lewis from the LA Zoo stepping forward, and as he is doing that, Just, colleagues, I made this motion after the conversation we had in committee back in March of this year, and it is the responsibility of this committee and the City Council to delve into the issues to ensure process, accountability, that we are able to work with the zoo and help provide a world-class experience for visitors and especially the well-being of the animals on exhibit. We noted in an earlier report from the zoo that, in fact, all of the memorandums of understandings between GLAZA and the city had expired, every last one of them. The report before us is meant to push the work forward and ensure that each of these contracts is serving the zoo visitors and Angelinos. With that, Mr. Lewis, if you could walk us through the report and touch upon each of the MOUs and their current status, that would be very helpful. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. John Lewis, General Manager at the Los Angeles Zoo. And as we have indicated...
And John, can you just pull the microphone a little closer to you?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. My kids said I don't talk softly, but other people do. So at any rate. So we gave you this report to try to bring you on an update of where we're at on these different MOUs. And if I can, I'll just kind of go through them. But overall, our target is to have these MOUs finalized by the end of this month, so then the committee can consider them and hopefully approve them going forward for the next year. That will give us time then to work on a new business and marketing plan and develop the needed MOUs for the future. So membership, publications, and the volunteer programs. So the MOU is expired. We are working with GLAZA. They are working on a draft of this MOU, which we will then review and work with the CLA and the CAO to bring that forward. I do want to go back because I know it seems like we just kind of dropped these things, but as a reminder to the committee, they got dropped as the city was discussing the privatization of the zoo with GLAZA. And a lot of things got dropped during that standpoint, waiting to see what the future. So it wasn't that we weren't trying to do the work, it's just that other work was going on at the time. The Concessions Agreement, which I assume we'll talk about a little bit more this morning, we are working on that MOU, and it's kind of pending what happens with the committee today or in the future, so we can define that MOU going forward. Special assistance and special events, which of course is fundraising, but also special events and community affairs. They are working on a new MOU. Our MOU for marketing, special events, and other activities just expired recently with the MOU for marketing, PR, et cetera. And so we are putting these special events into that MOU going forward. We have one more year on the business and marketing plan, and we'll wrap those items into that MOU as well. There are some events that happen during the weekdays that will continue to be in this particular MOU, but we will be kind of separating those two things out. The carousel is actually going to move from GLAZA management to zoo management, and the zoo is working on that MOU currently to follow up with the new MOU where the city and the zoo will actually be operating the carousel going forward. The original concept was that GLAZA raised the money, which they did, and they built the carousel, and then that was about the time we went through all the employee reductions due to the economic downturn. So they've continued to operate it and provide revenue to the zoo in that area. And then the marketing and public relations and catering that I just talked about, this one just expired in June, and we are working on the update for that for the next year to get us through the rest of the current business and marketing plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the updates.
Okay. One of the constant backdrops to everything zoo related is the operating agreement that extends until 2021. And you mentioned in the report that talks between GLAZA and the zoo are expected to begin sometime next year in relation to the operating agreement in order to, assure an updated agreement in time, because it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversation, negotiation, et cetera. what do you need from the city in order, at what point does it make sense to really daylight those conversations and involve the city? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think, again, on what happens with item number 2 today is kind of the last thing pending on that. Once we know what's going to happen with the concessions, we still have to work on that long-term agreement. And then from that agreement, we can work on the operating agreement as well. So it's kind of a stepping stone.
Okay. And do you see any interesting features to that conversation coming up?
I think the
Challenges.
interesting thing is that, part of what's made this so complicated is that the operating agreement and there's too many MOUs is what I'm trying to say. We want an agreement on all the activities that Glaza is performing for the city. But if we can find a way to streamline so that, that the different activities are compiled into reasonable number of MOUs, I think it'll make it easier to go forward. The other point, I think, as we go forward, to Mr. Bloomfield's point, last time we met is, put realistic metrics in those agreements.
Okay, and I think part of the challenge, and we've talked about this, is an operating agreement that was adopted in the 1980s to last until the year 2021. Must have been a very different reality back in the 80s when they thought, oh, let's do an operating agreement that lasts, 25 years. So it'll be...
Well, we can go for 50 this next time if you want to break the barrier.
Yeah. That, God only knows what life will be like then, right? So you mentioned late August coming back to this committee with the negotiated documents for the various MOUs. What makes you feel that they'll be ready that quickly?
Because I've made that commitment to this committee that we'll have it done by the end of the month. So we'll have it done.
Okay, all right. And has some sort of timeline come into view in terms of the business and marketing plan and the entities that need to be involved in updating that?
Well, we have this next year still within the current plan. So there's several things going on at the zoo in addition to what we're talking about today. We will start this week working with the consultant on the new master plan.
Okay.
That will also be part of the discussion about the business and marketing plan. How do we make that happen? What are the resources we're going to need to start moving forward with the new master plan? So that's happening. We want to get these things out of the way, and then we can move into the business and marketing plan.
Do you see this consultant as providing structure so that these various requirements can be addressed, in a timely manner and in a constructive way so that we meet the timelines?
So the master plan is largely aimed at facilities, but also the services within those facilities. How the visitor uses the site, how staff maintains the site, where they interact and where they shouldn't. The way the zoo is built now, as you may be familiar, is there's too much interaction between visitors and maintenance staff and support staff during the day once the zoo opens. And so we're going to be looking at those kind of things. But also, from a business side, facilitating special events, parties, multi-use of the site. That'll be part of the master plan, which then we have to look at the business plan on how do we then use those things and build a plan where we can support those activities.
Okay, so you think that just internally your own schedule for dealing with the various timeframes that need to be met is perfectly capable and self-sustaining, separate from the master plan process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, questions?
Just one, thank you for the
Mr.
report.
Price.
One area that we've been talking about is just access. And how do we improve access? How do, that's certainly part and parcel of the marketing program. But I'm just curious, do we have any metrics of, numbers of kids have come through school programs or, how can you quantify, the outreach? We did outreach to X number of schools located in, these areas, or, we supported programs by these organizations that were doing X. Some information like that would be real helpful, especially as we work with you, seeing how we can expand the base. And
we do have those numbers, council member. I'd be happy to send them to the committee. We have numbers of the school groups that use the zoo through our reservation programs.
That's a no-charge program, correct?
For LAUSD, it's no charge. For non-LAUSD schools, it's, I believe, $3, right? $3 for the kids and $5 for chaperones.
Mm-hmm. And how about for charter schools? How does it, charter,
They'd be included in that.
they're included in the public school
You know,
kind of program?
help me out, Denise, on the,
The charter schools are considered like the non-LAUSD schools, so they would be $3 for students and $5 for adults.
And then what are the LA Unified schools? 3 or free?
Free,
Oh, free,
free.
okay. Okay, good.
and the issue with the schools.
And do we have some kind of a number or a goal or a limit or a max on the number of
Well, we haven't got
these
close
groups
to
you
our
do a
goal.
year?
We do have a goal each year, and it's also facilitated. I mean, one of the things that we still hear from the schools is they have the time and the interest, but they don't have the transportation.
Right.
So we have some small grant programs that will provide transportation to the schools, but it's really on a first-come, first-served basis. And a lot of the teachers that use this, they're familiar with it, so they get in early and claim those funds. But we also do summer programs, well, not just summer, we do summer and winter and spring programs, camps at the zoo. And we, again, have some small grant programs where kids that might not otherwise be able to afford those programs can still attend them. So we do quite a bit, but we can always do more.
Yeah. Well, again, so just some kind of a breakdown on what what that level of assistance has been. 400 kids came in at no charge, or we $3,000 for just whatever the numbers are that
Sure.
shows how we are quantifying that level of involvement and support will be something I'm interested in, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Rue.
Just a quick comment. As Councilmember Price has said, I look forward to seeing those numbers as well. And I just want to say I've been to the zoo on several occasions for various meetings or events. Whether it's weekday or weekend, I mean, whatever you guys are doing, it looks like it's working. I know you said you're not at capacity, but I hope and it looks like you'll probably get to capacity soon. So I really look forward to seeing the master plan and everything that you've been doing and your plan to do with Glaza and all the MOUs, because whatever it is, it's starting to work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield.
I think you covered most of it. I mean, we're talking about the overall operating agreement. I think it's good to include that as part of the report back with the other stuff. But I think this is a great step in the right direction, and appreciate the work that you're doing on it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Mr. Kretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How do we think we're doing in terms of marketing to the general public compared to where we've been in the past, compared to competitors like San Diego Zoo?
Well, each year we've been able to increase attendance and revenues. This year we finished the year, and we're still doing the final numbers, but once again we were up over 1.7 million in our annual attendance, which is a 25-year high. Revenues came in about 4% below projections, but they still were more than last year, so we keep inching our ways up. I would say that we're doing good. We're seeing different crowds. Last Friday we had a Roaring Nights at the zoo, which featured country western music, and keepers that worked that night told me it was a different crowd. And that's what we're trying to do, is get a variety of people to use the zoo and recognize its value. This Friday, if you haven't already bought your tickets, Brew at the Zoo. Over 30 area microbreweries will be at the zoo, and it's a different crowd, as you can imagine. I never knew people got so serious about drinking their beer, but they do. They show up with their rating cards and everything else, and it's been interesting. But even during the day, this year, a couple of things that we changed. We've been looking at a lot of the daily events that we have been doing that are expensive to produce, but don't seem to change the attendance that much. We used to do an Endangered Species Day. This year we did an Endangered Species Week, and really focused on what was going on at the zoo and the different activities that we're doing, but other animals that still need work, not just in a zoo, but obviously people supporting conservation, or maybe growing up one day and being biologists, field biologists, et cetera. So we really have been looking at the events of how effective they are in encouraging people to come to the zoo versus just throwing an event.
Very good. Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for the report. We appreciate it. So here's, I'm going to recommend that we continue the item in committee, request that final documents be submitted when available, as Mr. Lewis already committed to, available for review and approval by council, and direct the zoo to report back with details on process and substance relative to updating the operating agreement between the LA Zoo and GLAZA. So thanks again, and we will see you again in committee very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Mr. Chairman, can I just confirm for the record whether we have any public comments on this item that we haven't already heard? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do not. Comments were already heard unless there are new cards. All right. Well, that brings us to item 2. Mr. Sutton-Willis.
Item number 2, City Administrative Officer and the Chief Legislative Analyst Joint Report relative to the framework and timeframes required to release a request for proposals for concessions at the Los Angeles Zoo.
All right. And I believe Mr. Lewis will be joined by Terry Sauer of the CAO's office, and you yourself, Mr. Sutton-Willis, from the CLA's office. And if need be, we have Dov Liesel here from City Attorney's office if he should be needed by anyone who has questions specific to legal.
So thank you very much. Blaine Sutton-Willis at the CLA's office. We'll start off with the Zoo Concession Agreement, originally executed in '81 between the Department of Rec and Park and GLAZA, granted GLAZA, the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association, the exclusive right to maintain and operate all concession operations at the zoo. In '97, the City Council established by ordinance the Zoo Department, and approved a 25-year operating agreement between the city and GLAZA. The operating agreement amended the 1981 concession agreement to allow zoo concessions operated by GLAZA to be subcontracted by GLAZA pursuant to an RFP process and meeting all city requirements. Subordinate to the concessions agreement is GLAZA's contract with the concessionaire to provide all food, catering, and merchandising sales, as well as other patron-supported services like strollers and rentals at the zoo. This committee, at the instruction of council, instructed CLA and the CAO in March of 2016 to draft a report on the framework and timeframes required to release a request for proposals for concessions at the zoo. Council also approved a temporary extension of the existing concession agreement between the Zoo Department and the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association through August 31st, 2016. We are fast approaching that date this month. It is estimated that the RFP process will take roughly 12 to 18 months. This time frame incorporates the RFP, proposal submission and review, vendor selection, appeals, and final contract negotiations. We have a number of recommendations to put forth for the committee for your approval as well, but we also include that if more time is necessary for this process, council authority should be utilized to extend in short and manageable increments to encourage the department and GLAZA to work on this process in an expedited time frame. It's pretty important that we do that. We also know that GLAZA is already is about to engage a hospitality consultant, and we're willing to work with that individual as necessary. And we've also included a number of recommendations, but as part of our research, we find that it's important that city staff with experience in the development and management of concessions agreement should review the RFP process and participate in the evaluation and selection process. Now, I will leave it up to my colleagues at the CAO's office to go through the recommendations.
Good morning, council members. Zara Bukirin with the Office of the CAO. The recommendations of the joint CLA and CAO report are as follows. 1, instruct the zoo and the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association to provide greater city participation in the concessions request for proposals process by requiring A, the new RFP to follow city contracting procedures pursuant to the operating agreement between the city and GLAZA. B, a city representative with experience in the management of concessions within a department, including but not limited to El Pueblo, Recreation and Parks, or Los Angeles World Airports, to assist in the development of the RFP and to participate as a member of the evaluation committee. And C, provisions of the city's good food purchasing policy to be incorporated into the RFP. For recommendation number 2, please note that we need to make an amendment. The recommendation should read, extend the concessions agreement between the Zoo Department and GLAZA by 6 months to February 28, 2017, with a 6-month renewal option to allow time for the issuance of the new concessions RFP and the selection of a proposed vendor, subject to council approval and to the approval of the city attorney as to form.
I'm sorry, would you say that last part again, to the, and to the approval of city attorney
As to form.
as to form?
Yes, that's
Okay, thank you.
Recommendation number 3, instruct the Zoo and GLAZA to report to the Arts, Parks, and River Committee every 90 days with a status report on the development of the RFP and the findings of GLAZA's hospitality consultant. 4, instruct the Zoo and GLAZA to transmit a draft RFP for concessions to your committee for approval by council. 5, instruct the Zoo Department to ensure that the new concessions contract includes a greater revenue share for the zoo that ensures a larger distribution of commissions to the zoo. And 6, instruct the Zoo Department and GLAZA to transmit the draft concessions contract to the City Council for review and approval. There's no general fund impact from the recommended actions. We are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. John, anything to add?
Just one request for the committee to consider, since, as it says in the summary of the report, that it's expected this process will take 12 to 18 months, and the fact that it also requires 90-day report backs, I would ask you to reconsider recommendation number 2 and extend the current concessions contract for 12 months with an option for a 6-month extension. It allows GLAZA to continue to negotiate with the current contractor with some longer term. We're still negotiating for additional services, et cetera. They just got 2 new trams from that contractor without any future obligations, so it really does give them the option to do that while we're going through this process.
CLA, CAO, how do you feel about that?
Terry Sauer with the CAO's office. It's within the time frame, but it's really at the call of the chair at this point.
So 12 to 18 months has been stated anyway. Mr. Lewis is asking for 12 months with a 6-month extension. I don't love it, but I don't see why we shouldn't have some flexibility to do it, since that's the reality of the situation. Colleagues, any pushback on that?
No.
I think it's fair enough. So I'm happy to add that amendment into item, was it item 2?
Recommendation
It was
number
item
2.
2. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Now, we're here for your questions.
Wonderful, thank you. So, any other anticipated steps in the process that we didn't already lay out in the report or just now at the table?
I don't think so, sir.
Pretty straightforward?
Yes.
Okay. And any other governing documents that the zoo needs to have in consideration of getting the contract in order? No?
Well, there are a number of governing contracts with this process, and so one of the things we were very mindful of in addressing this in this report is that we don't want to upset the apple cart on other relationships the zoo has with GLAZA or the city has with GLAZA as well. So we tried to narrow this down to the concessions agreement and the work from there, but we will also need the instruction of this committee and council for further policy discussions of those other documents.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
we'll be around and awaiting your instructions when that time happens.
Okay, and we will certainly have those instructions, and we will certainly have a sense of urgency because I think extending timelines is, the reality of the situation, but extending them too much is, not as efficiency issues come into place, and so I think if we can keep to this 1-year timeline, that would be terrific. That's what I'll be pushing for.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you may want to hear from the president of GLAZA regarding their.
I'm sorry?
You may want to hear from the
Sure.
president of GLAZA.
Yeah. Connie, would you like to?
Thank you, members of the committee. GLAZA deeply appreciates that you are interested to move forward with GLAZA and the concessions agreement. And
And Connie, just for the records, state your full name.
Connie Morgan, President, Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. So we do appreciate the seriousness of wanting to move forward with concessions into the future. And we actually do appreciate also the potential extension of a year of the contract. I did want to share with you that we have been working very diligently this summer and have already come very close to a draft for an RFP, and we did go out, we did use our consultant Franco Day, and we did go out and talk to the Department of Rec and Parks, and we also talked with the airport. So we have begun to gather that information that way. We've included the good food policy already. So I guess the only thing I have to say today is that it being summer, while the staff has been working on this, we have not yet been able to talk to our concessions committee and our trustees, especially in light of what has come up this morning. They have not yet really been apprised of this discussion. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because they need a chance to talk about this.
And what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting?
I would
pull something
ask that
together,
the
or-
committee not. I would like to have the extension for the one-year agreement right now so that we can continue working, but I would like there to be a little more discussion between the trustees and the committee on and the zoo on
Okay.
how the process might roll forward.
Well, so we
Yeah,
are going to.
respectfully.
Sure, Ms. Morgan. So we're going to adopt the amendment to, extend it by a year with a 6-month option after that. And that'll give us a lot of time, I think, to have those conversations and also more committee hearings as it relates to this contract.
Okay.
So I think that'll give us the time we need, and then we can, although I'll be reluctant to, we could always extend it again should we not be as far as I'd like us to be.
Okay.
But I think that gives us some flexibility that we didn't have before. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, colleagues, questions? Yes, Mr. Blumenfield.
Question for sort of CAO, CLA, and it regards recommendation number 5, instructing the Zoo Department to ensure the new concessions contract includes a greater revenue share for the zoo and ensures a larger distribution of commissions to the zoo. I want to understand why that recommendation is being made. And I think maybe related to that, regarding the concessions subcontract, how was it determined that the zoo would retain 10% of the gross receipts? And why did GLAZA get an additional commission as described in attachment 4? So just trying to follow the money, sort of where it's going, why it's going, what's the rationale for the distribution, and what's the lens that we should be using to understand the right mix? And related to that, maybe I'm throwing too much on in one question, but how much of the cost of that cost is going to the cost of managing the contract, and how much of it is going to something else, and what is that something else?
Mr. Blumenfield, Terry Sauer with the CAO staff. Part of the reason behind that recommendation is that as we know from the Greek Theater and some recent concessions activity within the city, that the market has changed. And so in part, the purpose of that recommendation is to revisit what are the best practices and look at that and determine if there are better sharing arrangements than what's currently provided. The original 10% split with GLAZA and the current revenue sharing agreement was spelled out, I believe, in the operating agreement and also the concessions agreement, and so those have been in place in some time. The zoo, GLAZA receives a 3% share also that helps them administer the contract. Is that your question?
So the additional commission described in 4, that's to administer the contract?
Are we looking at? Are we talking about Amendment 4? Are we talking about the capital investment, sir?
I get confused in all of it here, but, and then I see that there's a part that says, under the terms of the concession, Plaza retains 3% of the total gross receipts, along with marketing and, well, that's another related question. What is marketing and product exclusivity revenue?
That would be sponsorships. That would be such, they have an agreement with Pepsi. I think if John can answer greater specifics on that. Product exclusivity would be your sponsorship. So I believe they have an agreement with Pepsi. They may have some other smaller sponsorships agreements, and I would defer to John on.
And those go exclusively to Glaza?
To Glaza, and then I believe some of that is funneled back to the zoo.
John Lewis from the zoo. The Glaza gets the sponsorship monies that they use for marketing and public relations for the zoo as part of the marketing and PR MOU as well. So they convinced their concessionaire to make these contributions towards marketing the zoo.
I'm not following. So you have a concession contract with, subcontractor with Volume Services America.
Correct.
They then use Pepsi exclusively. And then, because they use Pepsi exclusively, Pepsi pays Glaza a chunk of money.
Correct, which they in turn use for marketing at the zoo.
Hang on. We're talking about two different things here. So you
can see why it gets a little confusing to try to follow them.
So the Pepsi question is separate from this marketing and promotional sponsorship money that was specifically given to promote the zoo by our concession contractor. Denise or Connie, can you help me with the sole product exclusivity on what?
And maybe I'm mixing up too many things. Maybe we should start with the sort of the basic underlying question, which is how, what is the lens that we should use to determine how much Glaza gets versus the zoo? And obviously there was a feeling by the CLA-CAO that the zoo should be getting a larger portion.
Again, this is, the market has changed since the original agreement was put in place. We know from the responses that Rec and Parks received on certain of their concessions agreements. So what this specifically was there to, as we move through this process, to find out what the best practices are in terms of that type of revenue sharing, and maybe come back with we would bring back recommendations if there need to be adjustments to that, or to reflect what's going on with other institutions, similar type institutions. So we don't have a specific number there, but we do know that given the length of time since 1997, it's prudent. That's an area that the council has shown an interest in, and we wanted to call it out, and we wanted the opportunity to look at what other zoos similar in size to the LA Zoo are doing, and other venues that may be similar in size and what their practices are. And so that's really what we're trying to get at. Is the current model working? Should we tweak the current model? Is there something in between? Is there a hybrid? And so the answer to that piece is we don't know what it is right now, because that's why we want to look at it. That's why we called it out. But as I said, we have some experience to suggest that the market has changed. And so we want an opportunity to look at that. And those recommendations would come back.
Does that help?
It does. I'm still not following it 100%, but that's all right. I mean, I get there's the percentage of gross receipts,
right?
Which is, it's benchmarked at 10,
right?
For Glaza, and I'm not sure how
concession. No, it's for the zoo.
For the zoo, of gross receipts, and then there's 3% is earmarked for Glaza, which a portion of that is for administration of the contract.
Correct.
Is the 3% for the administration of the contract, or is there something else in there too?
I believe that's all it's used for.
The administration of the contract, and it.
Right, and then there's additional commissions that are in attachment 4.
Correct.
Pull those up again. That were some additional commissions, and I don't know how that fits in. If that's a lot of money, a little money, or what? how does that relate to all this?
These are ongoing agreements between GLAZA and the concessionaire. Some of the money has been used for capital. The $300,000 that you mentioned as it relates to the sponsorship is spelled out in Amendment 4. I think Connie can speak in greater detail. A lot of the capital investment that's been provided by the concessionaire, it's improvements to the facility, change in signage, upgrading of equipment. That's typically the type of thing that they've been investing as things need to be repaired. You know, a deep fat fryer, for example.
Buying trams.
Buying trams. So, you know, different things that GLAZA and the concessionaire have negotiated. And as I said, I think Connie can probably go into.
That could be the remodeling of the stores. It's a great
And
many.
those are sort of separate earmarked
Yeah.
or separate commissions on the concession.
Well, it's not that $2 million investment is built into the entire concessions deal, but it's not a commission.
Yeah. And we.
It's part of their investment as part of the.
We do have that information available in excruciating detail. We can provide you with the spreadsheet, but a general overview, it's capital improvement, physical plant type of work.
Do you want to speak, Denise? The $300,000 over the term of the amendment for marketing, promotional, and sponsorship purposes, what we did was ask the concessionaire to participate in the marketing of the zoo, specifically to zoo lights. And so one half, well, in the case of this $300,000, it was $150 each year for 2 years. $50,000 went into the marketing budget to help market the zoo during the year as part of our budget to market the zoo, the $2 million. And $100,000 went to underwrite zoo lights, the net of which comes back to the zoo in revenue. So it just helps us conduct zoo lights so that the net can come to the zoo in terms of admissions revenue, or what we call it, nighttime ticketed events revenue. And so in a sense, it's contributing to the overall net admissions revenue to the zoo. It has a direct line to that to make it happen.
Well, I guess, and part of it, so we're going to see the recommendations, how that all fits together, and I mean, it sounds like it all fits together nicely. I almost need a flow chart, though. To kind
You
of,
do.
And
Flow
we'd
charts
be
are
happy
good.
to meet with either you or your staff if
Yeah.
you want to have further discussions on this. We are always available.
that would be great. I mean, and maybe in the end, as part of the operating agreement, as we do these concession agreements, to have those flow charts out there so we can see, because it goes back into the marketing, but then so does the admissions price go to the marketing, and then you don't know, you assume nothing's double counted, and it all works out, and I have every confidence it does, but it's hard to follow.
And again, sir, we're happy to sit down with you or your staff and provide greater detail.
You can see why one of my goals going forward is to try to simplify these agreements.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a very admirable goal. I mean, I think it would make it better
easier to follow
all the way around, to have a simple, clear, I mean, in some ways, the privatization would be the clearest. But absent that, you want to have, you get mired in this hybrid arrangement, and it makes it hard to follow where the money's going and how it's going. I'll stop there. Listen.
Yeah. Mr. Kretz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a fine point on a fine point. I'm pleased to see the good food purchasing guidelines were included in the RFP, and I strongly support that. I'm grateful for it. For colleagues who may not remember, we passed that in 2012, and it provides guidelines for more nutritious menu options, requires that the food be locally sourced, and that the farms treat their workers and their animals humanely, etc. So a fine point on the fine point is, given the various dietary restrictions out there, especially followed in Los Angeles, including folks that are vegan and folks that are allergic to gluten, will we try to include that in some of our food sourcing at the zoo, at some of our concessions, so folks that have those various dietary restrictions can follow them easily?
Everybody's looking down the table.
I'm sure we will.
Or if we haven't thought of that, can we think of that now?
Well, because we are in LA, that's not only good nutritional policy, it's also good economic policy to have items available for the visitors when they come. The current concessionaire has a pretty good variety of, at least from the vegetarian and vegan side, of things that are prepared without meat or around meat. I was trying to think what else is
And
in
a
that.
great deal of locally sourced.
Yeah, they're already moving in that area, so they're hearing you.
Well, hopefully with healthy items at the same time, that would be good. I mean, I know there are animal-shaped French fries available that are probably vegan but not necessarily healthy. So hopefully some. Yeah, I can't claim I've never had them, but
I think we're still going to have churros, though. I'm not sure what we could do to replace that and the volume that.
But at least if you have those healthy vegan and gluten-free options, that would be a good thing to include.
And just keeping in mind that these contracts will come back before this committee, so we can scrutinize further the details of these options based on the good food purchase policy. So it's a great point, and it's a good thing to be included. Colleagues, anyone else? Any questions, comments? All right. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
may I just ask one question
Sure.
of one of my colleagues? Connie, we mentioned that we need to take this to the trustees of GLAZA.
Yeah.
Is there a time frame that you could provide for that?
Well, we will meet again in early September as a board, but we can be communicating with the concessions committee during the month of August on it. They're scattered right now, and as soon as I can get them all back together, I'll find a way to get that communication going and back to you.
And so we can get that information within the first 90-day report that's in the recommendations of our report.
That's a great point, Mr. Seton-Willis. Thank you. All right, so I think the conversation, especially with respect to Mr. Blumenfield's questions, illustrates exactly why we are moving forward to clarify all this, because it's when I got into the city council 3 years ago and we started looking into the various issues, the concessionaires and the MOU and marketing plan, et cetera, it's this gigantic abstract beast, and if we can't understand it, then we certainly can't explain it. And so if the public asks us what we're doing and how we're approving things and why, and we have no answer, then we're really falling down on the job here. So that illustrates exactly why we're moving forward in the way that we are, so that we can remove the mystery from now on. And I think that'll be better for everyone. And that's what I'm excited that we're doing here. So with that, we do have one comment on item 2 before I make my recommendations, and that is from Karen Law. Karen Law. Welcome, and thank you all.
Hi, good morning, City Council members. My name is Karen Law, Leadership Fellow with the LA Food Policy Council. We're here today to support the report's recommendations to include the city's good food purchasing policy into the new RFPs for the LA Zoo. Departments across the city, including Rec and Parks through its summer lunch program, have already incorporated this policy into their RFPs, so I think this is a really exciting opportunity for the LA Zoo to do the same. Not only would GLAZA's inclusion of this policy shift a tremendous amount of food dollars to more responsible food sources, but it's also an opportunity for the zoo to demonstrate its commitment to animal welfare on a holistic level. So as the zoo receives millions of visitors each year, this policy would help ensure that their meals not only support animal welfare, but also environmental sustainability, local supply chains, and economic development, living wage jobs, and healthy eating. So as LA, or as cities across the country continue to follow LA's lead in adopting the good food purchasing policy, let's make sure that LA remains a leader in using its food purchasing power to support a good food system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Law. All right, so colleagues, with that, one simple recommendation, that is adopt the recommendations in the CAO, CLA report as amended specific to recommendation number 2 that were mentioned. Without objection, that is the order. All right, that's exactly what we'll do. Thank you. And that brings us to item number 3.
Item number 3 is a motion by Councilmember Bonin and Koretz relative to the Department of Recreation and Parks use of an insecticide called Roundup in parks and the feasibility of using alternative products.
Thank you, and good afternoon, gentlemen, and welcome.
Good morning. Good afternoon, and hello to all the council members and everybody on the board. My name is Ramon Barajas. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Recreation and Parks, Construction, Maintenance, and Planning. And today we're here to talk about the use of Roundup in our parks. So Recreation and Parks is responsible to control various pests in our park system, and throughout we have approximately over 1,600 acres of parkland. And this includes pests, weeds, diseases, and other vertebrate pests. We do this with the guideline of our integrated pest management program, which strongly encourages the commitment to utilize a safe and least toxic means available as a preferred method to control any harmful and unwanted pests. The large majority of our vegetation is actually done through manual and mechanical methods. Most of our turf or weeds, we do it by mowing, edging. We cultivate our soils, and we also use line trimmers to control the majority of our weeds out there. Our pest management division consists of trained professionals who carry California Department of Pesticide Regulation licenses and certificates that require 20 hours of continual education every 2 years for renewal. These applicators work under the direction of a state registered pest control advisor. We would ask that in effort to be more proactive and be protective to the health and safety of the public, that we ask that we could report back to the committee with the information about various other methods of vegetation, as well as additional information regarding the most recent research on Roundup and its possible health and impacts.
Okay. Anyone else add to that? No?
I would just add, I'm Matt Rudnick. I serve as the department's chief sustainability officer, and the motion that was introduced, it was a particular case where we had used Roundup in the Pacific Palisades area, and it's a good opportunity for us to take a look at our use of Roundup as part of our integrated pest management program. There are recent studies that find Roundup and the active ingredient glyphosate that may have possible links to being a carcinogen, and so we want to be proactive in looking at that. Roundup is the most widely used herbicide in the world, and many other comparable jurisdictions use it as part of kind of the suite of tools we have for vegetation management. But we want to be transparent and very proactive in how we evaluate what methods we use. So, I think Ramon summarized kind of how we'd like to come back with a written report to the committee with additional information, both on our current use of Roundup and kind of the safety measures we have in place, and as well as just more information about the recent research and additional studies that are available that kind of can shed additional light on this.
Thank you. Javier, anything? No?
Good morning, Commissioners. Javier Solis, Superintendent Maintenance Operations. Just like to echo on what Matthew Rudnick said. There is other agencies that are using glyphosate. For example, it's City of Santa Clarita, much more smaller agencies, but nonetheless, they're still using that product. City of Santa Monica, Santa Clarita, Dodger Stadium, just an example. Those are the municipalities and stadiums that continue to use this product.
Okay, and I know we have someone from Mr. Bonin's office here to say a few words, but before I bring them up, and while you're still up here, is there any comparable alternative out there to Roundup that Rec and Parks uses or could use, just out of curiosity?
Let me ask Laura Barnfine to clarify that.
Okay.
Good morning. Laura Barnfine, Recreation and Parks Principal Grounds Maintenance Supervisor with the Gulf Division. Currently, our Pest Control Advisor, Marty Friedman, is in communication with the other municipalities. We're also reaching out to the Gulf community to see if there are other viable alternatives. Right now, there is nothing as efficient or effective right now, but we're continuing to research and keeping our eyes and ears open to see if there is something out there that would be effective in our operation.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. Good to see you. Thank you so much. All right, and we have David Graham-Casso from Mike Bonin's office. I'd like to invite up the maker of the motion, rather.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. Good afternoon. My name is David Graham-Casso. I serve as the Communications Director and Environmental Policy Advisor for Councilmember Mike Bonin. I want to first of all sincerely thank you for hearing this item today and for the time you're taking to consider it. Councilmember Bonin authored this motion before you because he feels that the use of potentially dangerous herbicides like Roundup in our neighborhoods has serious public health and safety concerns, and that those issues should be discussed by policymakers in Los Angeles. Our office was first alerted to this issue when a local newspaper in the Pacific Palisades published a story regarding neighbors who were worried about the use of Roundup, which, as you probably know, is manufactured by the agrochemical company Monsanto in canyons near their homes. The Department of Recreation and Parks employees had reportedly been spraying the chemical on the bluffs below Villa de los Olas and El Medio, as well as along both sides of Lower Temescal Canyon Park in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood, in order to eliminate weeds. Roundup, as you heard earlier, Roundup contains glyphosate, which, according to the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, is likely a dangerous carcinogen that has been connected with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Studies have also linked the use of Roundup with bee colony collapses, monarch butterfly die-offs, Parkinson's disease, other cancer cases, and increased autism rates. There is still more study to be done, but the research that has been done already is alarming. Neighbors were obviously justified in their concerns, and they began to reach out to the city for both answers and action. I'm very pleased to report that after receiving calls from concerned residents, the Department of Recreation and Parks agreed to temporarily stop spraying Roundup in the neighborhoods. By being understanding, compassionate, and responsive, our Recreation and Parks Department demonstrated exactly how we hope all city departments will interact with our constituents, and for that they should absolutely be commended. The question before us today is what's next? With limited resources, the Recreation and Park staff need to be able to keep public areas like canyons orderly and free of invasive weeds, but we need to take a very serious look at whether the department must use potentially dangerous herbicides that could very likely threaten health. Councilmember Bonin's legislation asks that the department report on the use of Roundup in our neighborhoods, but also, more importantly, on what other options exist to achieve the same goals in a safer, cleaner, and more neighborhood-friendly way. Our hope is that today's hearing and the resulting action from this committee will allow the Recreation and Parks Department to provide the council with a menu of options for mitigating weeds in canyons and other public areas near homes and recreation areas. Councilmember Bonin wants the council to be able to make informed and strategic decisions that put public health, safety, and neighborhoods first. I thank the department for their time in investigating this issue and preparing the preliminary report that you just heard, and I again thank all of you for your time in considering this.
Thanks, David. Thank you. All right, colleagues, yes, Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank Mr. Bonin for bringing this forward, and it was my honor to have a chance to second this motion. I'm equally concerned about the use of Roundup, and I appreciate that we at least temporarily stopped using it in one location. I'm not sure if it was citywide temporarily. But I'm concerned that not just be temporary. And hearing not a lot of discussion of research into alternatives and the fact that we are looking for something that is as efficient and effective, which I don't think should be our only standard. If we find something that can work for the purposes that Roundup is used for, even if it's not quite as effective, I don't think that's the primary criteria. This is a chemical, glyphosate, that has been expressed as a probable human carcinogen by the United Nations group that was mentioned earlier. It's been found in farm workers' blood and urine. It's been found in the majority of rivers, streams, ditches, and wastewater treatment outfalls. It's been found in 70% of rain samples, which is pretty shocking. 90% of soybean samples, and most dramatically, it has contributed worldwide to the killing off and colony collapse of billions of honeybees, billions of monarch butterflies, and may be impacting our wildlife as well. So this is a very serious problem. I hope we are looking at every alternative and trying to find out whether any cities are using an alternative that might be less effective but still can work, and what the result would be if we completely stopped and didn't replace it. I mean, this is a serious, probably very dangerous chemical with some very dangerous impacts, and I hope we're giving this the full consideration that this issue merits.
Yes, safe and healthy for our park users and then our employees is very important to the department. It's #1 priority. So we are going to look into all the avenues of where we could make things better. Maybe looking to see what other options are out there. Right now, as it stands, we apply the Roundup with certified applicators, which we have about 5 or 6 of them in the department. So we don't use this Roundup all the time, because we do have, compared to the 500 employees that we have in the department that are actually doing manual and mechanical removal of weeds and other pesticides. But we will look into all the means, and we'll come back. And like I said, this is very important to the department. Health and safety to the community and to the employees is our #1 priority, and we'll come back and give you a report on what we're going to.
And I should add, unfortunately, I'm sure due to Monsanto lobbying, the federal government doesn't test for the impact of this chemical among other things that they test for. So we don't really have conclusive evidence that it's cancer causing for employees. We do have pretty conclusive evidence that it exists in the bloodstreams of farm workers that work in fields that have been sprayed with Roundup. And so without too much doubt, if we tested employees that work with Roundup, I'm sure we'd find it in their bloodstreams as well. We just don't know conclusively how serious that impact is.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? No? All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Thanks for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we do have one public comment, and that is from Barbara Edelman. Barbara Edelman. Anywhere you like, yeah.
Thank you so much for hearing this.
Thank you, and thanks
I'm one
for
of the local
patience.
residents that was concerned, so I'm very grateful to Councilman Bonin and to you, Mr. Koretz, for bringing this forward. I had a whole prepared thing, but you've covered a lot of it. Two things. The community of Irvine has implemented a completely organic pesticide program. You don't have to redesign the wheel. They fought the good fight. They banned Roundup and other pesticides from being used in their public parks, and they have a model for how to do it, as has the community of Riverside. Not Riverside. Wait a minute, I wrote it down. Irvine and Richmond, Richmond, California. As for cancer-causing deaths and studies, in Argentina, I think there's been tons of worldwide studies that confirm cancer deaths by exposure to glyphosate. My basic thing that I would love to say is the public parks are the public parks. I have a little 1.5-year-old grandson, and he comes to my house, and I would really love to take him to the park. But when I first became aware of this information, I called the Department of Parks and Recreation, and I was told by a man named Marty Friedman that they spray in the Palisades for Roundup every 1 to 3 months. That's a lot of Roundup, you know, to be saturating the community with. And I also wanted to know, I know there are some standards, they are not very high, to protect agriculture workers and limits of how much exposure you're allowed to have, but are there limits for park usage? I mean, who moderates, I mean, who controls that? Is there any kind of oversight or recommendation for how much is okay to spray? So I think that would be a good idea. And lastly, about the bees and the butterflies.
Oh, no, go ahead and wrap up your comment. 2 minutes goes by quickly.
Yeah, it did. We lost 40% of our bee population last year, and I know this seems really kind of out there, but if public lands can support pollinators, if parks could grow milkweed to sustain the monarch butterflies in their transit, and if children going to parks could see butterflies, I can't imagine that that would be a bad thing. So I think rethinking why we need to get rid of all these weeds and creating, I don't know how the Park Service works, but creating a park service that actually was beneficial to the environment, what a great thing you guys would have done. So anyway, that's my whole thing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Edelman. Thank you.
Thank you so much for hearing this.
You bet.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could add one thing, I recall with farm worker regulations that at least they're not allowed to go back into a field where pesticides have been sprayed for a certain period of time. I suspect we spray our pesticides and let park users go right back in the park. So that might be something at a minimum. If we don't eliminate Roundup, at a minimum we should look at that issue.
Okay, that's something that I'll ask Recreation and Parks to report back on in their written report. So what I'd like to do is move that we adopt the motion and request Recreation and Parks to prepare and submit a written report of their findings, including the policy of park users and employees of Recreation and Parks to be in the same environment where there has been fresh Roundup spraying. All right, without objection, that is the order. So moved. That is what we will do on item 3. Thank you. Excuse me. All right, so that concludes all the items, but we do have 2 public comment cards. So thank you, everyone, for your patience today. And our comment cards, first will be Dorsey, and then Zandra Myers.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Gentlemen, my name is Dorsey Dujan. I'm the founder of Make Music Los Angeles, but today I'd like to introduce you to Zandra Myers, who is the director of Connect LA and also the founder of Play Escape, which is a wonderful, incredible interactive art installation.
Okay. So as she said, I'm Zandra Myers. I'm the founder of Play Escape. We are dedicated to transforming urban communities into artistic playgrounds through immersive and interactive art. So the art we curate has a symbiotic relationship with math and science. Usually these have engineering elements, kinetics, technology, and you would find these large-scale installations at art and music festivals, so like Coachella or South by Southwest, Miami Art Basel, or Maker Fairs. Further, these are temporary art installations, which I know, finding public spaces for permanent pieces constantly becomes a challenge. So the great thing about the pieces we curate is it's kind of a cultural experience. they'll be here for temporary, like a long weekend, and then they go away. And so we can continue to bring more and more to expose children, families, and our whole community to these wonderful, inspiring pieces. We are producing a major arts festival for next spring. We're looking at either the weekend of April 8th or the weekend of May 6th. It's called I3 Arts Fest. That stands for Interaction, Immersion, and Innovation. We will have 3 activations that include large-scale art installations at Grand Park, the country's tallest musical instrument at Grand Performances, and an art car ball at LA State Historic Park. These activations, other than the art car ball, will be free and open to the public. The art car ball is just a way of us funding these huge pieces, but they will be accessible.
Great. I have a question. How long has Playascape been in?
Playascape's been founded, sorry.
That's okay.
Playascape was founded last year. So we've been working on this project, and this will be our first huge activation. I'd also like to invite you all, August 17th, we're having our launch party at City National Plaza off 5th and Flower. We will have one of these art installations for you to view. They're called infinity boxes. They are kind of like giant kaleidoscopes. So you look in and you can see yourself infinity times, invented by an Angelino who has a special effects background in the entertainment industry. So that's from 5 to 10. There'll be live music, beer tastings, a silent disco, art. It's going to be a great time, and you kind of really see what we're about, so we'd love to have you guys attend.
It's terrific. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for presenting and introducing yourself to this committee. And I'm going to pause for just a second. Colleagues, why is Armando Herman wandering around the floor, disrupting the meeting? Is there some sort of something going on here? Thank you. You may sit. You may sit and stop disrupting the meeting, Mr. Armando Herman. Okay, so now you've got Spindler interrupting, Herman interrupting. They just couldn't help themselves. All right, so Ms. Myers, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, Mr.
Yeah,
Price.
just a quick question. Good seeing you again. I know you made a presentation at the Coliseum Commission last week. And can we just get a follow-up number? The project is very exciting, and we're interested also maybe in some smaller neighborhood installation opportunities.
Absolutely.
So if you could give my deputy your information, we'd love to do a little follow-up conversation.
I'm just going to leave flyers for the event on the 17th, as well as our EPK that you can take a look.
Terrific. I would say if you've only been in existence for a little over a year and you have these great contracts already, that's a mark of your success. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing these.
Mr. Chair, if I could add one thing also. Century City has done some art installations regularly in their medians, so you may want to connect with the Century City Chamber of Commerce and see if there's some synergy there.
Absolutely love to. Thank you.
Terrific. All right. Seeing as there are no further comments and all the agenda items have been heard for this Arts, Parks, and River Committee, thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.